They didn't hurt you by accident. Some people planned your pain with precision. But what if your healing isn't in confrontation, but in silence, in boundaries, in walking away without a sound? This is the journey of reclaiming your peace, where your strength is no longer proven by what you endure, but by what you protect. You know, one of the most dangerous lies we whisper to ourselves is this: they didn't mean to hurt me. We chalk it up to an accident, a moment of weakness, just a slip of the tongue. But deep inside, we know better. There's a difference between someone making a mistake and someone making a move. A clear difference between innocent ignorance and intentional harm. And you felt that difference, didn't you? They didn't just wander into your heart by mistake and accidentally step on your trust. No, they entered with eyes wide open. They knew exactly what they were doing when they said what they said. They measured every word, they chose the moment, and they still went ahead. That's not confusion. That's not clumsiness. That's a mission. And when that realization hits you, it shakes your core. Because it wasn't a stranger who broke you. It was someone you let in. Someone you prayed for. Someone you stood up for, again and again. Someone you would have done anything for. And yet, they chose to wound you, fully aware of how deep the cuts would go. That's what makes it hard. That's what makes it personal. You see, the enemy doesn't always show up wearing red and horns. Sometimes, he walks in wearing loyalty. He comes cloaked in family, in love, in friendship. And when the knife finds its way into your back, it doesn't always scream betrayal at first. Sometimes it just whispers confusion. How could they? You wonder. Maybe I misunderstood. But you didn't. Deep down, you didn't misunderstand a thing. You just didn't want to believe it. You wanted to believe they were better than that. You wanted to believe they were still the person they used to be. That the history you shared meant something. That it guaranteed safety. But history doesn't equal honor. And time? It doesn't always build trust. Some people don't change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. And when the mask slips, don't act like you didn't see it. When someone shows you their intent, don't cover it with excuses. Don't explain away the ache you felt. That pain was real. That silence you sat in after they broke you, that was real. That lingering doubt that kept you awake, questioning your worth, it was real too. And here's the part that hurts the most. They saw it. They saw the damage. They saw how it shattered you. And they didn't flinch. They didn't check in. They didn't say, "I'm sorry." And if they did, it wasn't out of love. It was out of fear. Fear of losing control, not fear of losing you. So don't let your kindness blind you. Some people plan their hurt. They study you, learn your vulnerabilities, wait for the moment you're weakest, and then they strike. Not by chance, but with accuracy. And we call it love. We call it friendship. We call it family. But real love doesn't aim to destroy. Real love doesn't twist a knife when you're already on your knees. And the truth is, many of us keep reopening doors that God Himself closed for a reason. We ended the last part with a truth that cuts deep. Many of us keep reopening doors God Himself shut. And why? Often because we're afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of seeming unkind. Afraid of letting go. But let me remind you, God never asked you to lie to yourself just to hold on to someone else. If someone harmed you on purpose, that's not love. It's not care. It's not a mistake. That's manipulation. That's control. That's darkness disguising itself in the clothing of light. And it's time to stop pretending it's anything else. Not to shame them. Not to seek revenge. But to set yourself free. You see, forgiveness is one of the most powerful gifts God has given us. Not just for others, but for ourselves. When we choose to forgive, We don't pretend nothing happened. We choose to release the poison. We drop the weight that's been dragging our hearts down. We break the chains that bitterness tries to wrap around our souls. But let's be clear, forgiveness is not the same thing as access. Forgiving someone does not mean handing them the key to your peace again. Yet so many of us have been told to forgive so often that we forget to be wise. We think that real forgiveness means letting them back in, restoring the relationship, pretending everything is the same. We think it's holy to keep the door open. But that's not forgiveness, that's forgetfulness. And there is a difference. God asks us to forgive, yes, but He never asked us to be fools. He never said, let the wolf back into the sheepfold just because you prayed for him. Some people you've forgiven in your heart were never meant to walk with you into your future. They were part of your wilderness, not your promised land. Letting go of resentment doesn't mean you have to grab their hand again. Some of us are wearing ourselves out, trying to love people back into decency, hoping that if we just forgive more, pray more, stay longer, maybe they'll change. But sometimes God creates distance so we can finally hear Him clearly. Sometimes separation is the protection. And if you keep giving access to the very ones God is trying to remove, you're not walking in forgiveness, you're walking in disobedience. Forgiveness says, I release you. It says, I'm not carrying this anger anymore. But it also says, I'm going to protect the peace God gave me. That peace you found, it came at a cost. You cried for that peace. You fought for it. You crawled through some of the darkest nights of your life to get to that stillness again. So why hand it all back to someone who never valued it? Letting someone back in just because you've forgiven them. That's like giving a thief the keys to your house because you prayed about the last robbery. That's not healing. That's self-sabotage. Some people aren't sorry they hurt you. They're just sorry they lost access to you. They don't miss you out of love. They miss the ease with which they could use you. You were always there, always kind, always forgiving, and they counted on that. They mistook your grace for weakness, your patience for permission. And now that you've found your strength, now that you're finally seeing clearly, they want back in. Not to love you better, but to reset the same broken cycle. That's why you must learn this truth. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can pray for someone from a distance. You can wish them well without welcoming them into your space. You can carry love in your heart without carrying their weight in your life. God isn't looking at how many people you let in. He's watching how well you guard your boundaries. People may ask, but didn't you forgive them? And your answer can be simple. Yes, I forgave them. I just learned not to trust them again. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. That's not revenge. That's wisdom. The same God who told you to forgive also told you to guard your heart. And you can't guard what you keep handing over to those who only know how to break it. The world may try to convince you that forgiveness means reunion, that everything should go back to normal. But you know better. Forgiveness is between you and God. Access? That's between you and discernment. And when God is closing a door in your life, don't keep it propped open out of guilt. Because what if He saw something you didn't? What if He overheard the conversations behind? In the last part, we were reminded that when God closes a door, He sees what we don't. He hears what we never will. And that includes the whispers behind your back, the intentions hidden beneath kind eyes and quiet smiles. He knows the harm they never spoke out loud. He heard every silent scheme, every masked motive. That's why sometimes His protection shows up looking like isolation. And His mercy, it can feel like loneliness. But trust me, that's deliverance in disguise. You don't owe anyone access to your life simply because you forgave them. That's not arrogance. That's preservation. That's wisdom. That's honoring the healing God has begun in you. So yes, bless them. Pray for them. Release them. But stop giving front row seats to people who cheered when you stumbled. Stop handing microphones to those who only ever use your voice against you. Stop reopening doors in places God has already poured out His healing. And please, stop letting people hold the pen who once tried to erase your story. They didn't hurt you by mistake. It wasn't some fleeting moment of anger. No, it went far deeper than that. It was studied, calculated. They watched you. They paid attention. They learned what made you smile, what made you quiet. They listened to the tender places in your soul, to the dreams you whispered and the scars you covered. And with all that knowledge, they chose to wound you. That's why it stings the way it does. It's not just the act, it's the awareness behind it. They knew what you were going through. They saw the battle you were already fighting. They sensed the pain you were still healing from. And instead of shielding you, they turned your vulnerability into a weapon. That's not immaturity. That's intention. And friend, it's okay to admit that. It's okay to call it what it was. We've been trained to soften betrayal for the comfort of others, even while we're the ones bleeding. We say things like, they were just struggling, or maybe I overreacted, or they didn't really mean it. But the truth is, when someone chooses to hurt you with full knowledge, when they take what you trusted them with and use it to break you, that is not love. That's a weapon. Some of you gave your loyalty to people who only wanted leverage. You offered your secrets to those who saw them as ammunition. You shared your dreams with those silently hoping you'd fall. You thought they listened because they cared, but they were only listening for weakness. They weren't leaning closer to understand your heart. They were scanning for the cracks, so they could crush you in the place it would hurt the most. But hear me when I say this. You are not foolish for trusting. You are not weak for loving. You are not naive for hoping. That is not your shame to carry. That is not your guilt to wear. The darkness they held in their hearts is a reflection of them, not you. You were honest. You were open. You were genuine. And that is something to thank God for. Thank Him that this world didn't harden you before that moment. Thank Him that you still believed love was worth a chance. Yes, it was taken advantage of. Yes, it was misused. But that doesn't mean your heart was wrong. It just means theirs was. Some people know exactly what they're doing. They bait you with affection. They cloak their motives in charm. They make promises they never intended to keep. And once your guard drops, that's when they strike. That's why it's so hard to process, because it looks so real. Maybe some parts were, but the wound, that wasn't accidental. It was chosen. It was targeted. That's what makes it unforgettable. But listen, God saw it. Even when you didn't. He saw the manipulation. He saw the envy. He saw how they twisted your goodness into a tool. And He let it surface, not to crush you further, but to set you free. Because sometimes the truth only shows up through pain. Sometimes betrayal is the only thing loud enough to break the spell. Sometimes it takes a wound to make you stop justifying the red flags you kept ignoring. You thought you were in a safe place. We uncovered a hard truth. Sometimes what you thought was a safe place was a setup. They acted like they had your back, but they were only waiting for the moment to twist the blade. That's not just wrong. That's evil. And yet, here you are. You survived it. You made it through the darkness. And now your vision is sharper. You see who they really are. You see through the mask, through the false kindness, through the subtle cruelty wrapped in sweet words. More importantly, you see what God was protecting you from all along. Because let's be honest, the enemy doesn't always come charging in from the outside. No, he's far more strategic than that. He uses those who are close, those you trust, those you've given access to your soul. because betrayal only works when it comes from within. But thank God today for what didn't succeed. What was designed to destroy you failed. What was meant to crush you awakened something stronger. What was supposed to break you ended up building a fire inside you that nothing can put out. Maybe they thought you'd never recover, that their silence would slowly tear apart your self-worth, that you'd keep begging, keep hoping, keep waiting for them to come back. But you didn't. You're still standing. You're still here. And now you know better. Don't rewrite the truth just to make it easier to swallow. Don't ignore the facts to protect a memory. If someone studied you and still chose to hurt you, that's not confusion. That's clarity. That's not someone who deserves a second chance. That's someone God exposed. And when God exposes something, let that be enough. Let the truth open your eyes, not reopen your door. There comes a time, yes, even in faith, when the most godly thing you can do is walk away. Not out of hate, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally chosen wisdom. You don't have to remain in a place where your soul is under constant fire. You don't have to keep showing up where you're merely tolerated, not treasured. There is a sacred strength in walking away, a strength that's often misunderstood. It takes bravery to say, no more. Not like this. Because the enemy, he'd love to keep you stuck in a cycle, a pattern of pain, apologies without change, empty promises dressed as hope. He wants you to believe staying is noble, that keeping the peace, even if it costs your own peace, is love. But that's a lie. Love doesn't leave you confused. Love doesn't drain you. Real love builds. It protects. It brings clarity. And sometimes, love for yourself and reverence for the presence of God in your life means walking away from the very people who took you for granted. Some people, they knew you were valuable. They just hoped you wouldn't realize it. They drained you, not because you were weak, but because they feared the person you'd become if you stopped depending on their approval. They smiled in your face while slowly crushing your spirit behind closed doors. When you finally tried to speak up, they called you too sensitive. When you dared to set a boundary, they accused you of being selfish. But they never acknowledged the pain they caused, the damage they did in silence. And still you stayed. You stayed because you hoped your loyalty would change them. You stayed because you thought loving harder, praying harder, giving more would finally break through. But there comes a sacred moment when you have to see what God is showing you. And maybe the healing you're praying for isn't in staying. Maybe it's in leaving. Let me speak this truth over you. Walking away does not make you weak. It means you've grown. It means you've seen enough. It means you finally realized begging for crumbs at a table where God never sat is not your calling. It means you're done trying to convince someone to value what they were always meant to protect. That's not pride. That's clarity. And yes, it will hurt. Walking away always comes at a cost. You'll grieve what you hoped it could be. You'll feel the weight of what you gave. But that pain, it's temporary. It's the sting of release. And beyond that sting is peace. True peace. The kind that doesn't shift with someone else's mood. The kind that lets you breathe without holding your breath. The kind that returns when you finally obey the soft whisper of the Holy Spirit that's been saying, "It's time." We learn that peace often begins with goodbye, and that sometimes walking away is the most sacred act of obedience. But still, many of us wrestle with the ache of release, questioning whether we're doing the right thing, even after God has shown us the truth again and again. Some of you have been crying out to God for peace, asking Him to calm the storm. And He's been responding, not always with comfort, but with clarity. He's been showing you their fruit. He's been pulling back the curtain, revealing hearts you didn't want to see clearly. He's allowed the foundation to crumble, not to punish you, but to wake you up. And yet, what happens? You patch it back together. You tape it up with excuses. You paint over the cracks, pretending like nothing ever happened. But every time you do that, every time you minimize the harm, justify their behavior, or deny your pain, you delay the very deliverance you've been praying for. You're grieving people God already removed his hand from. You're pleading for restoration to something that heaven already closed the chapter on. And here's the truth. Not every relationship is meant to be revived. Not every closed door is meant to swing open again. Sometimes, the blessing is found in the ending. Sometimes, true healing doesn't begin until you say goodbye. Don't let guilt trick you into staying in spaces that are slowly tearing you apart. You do not owe anyone your sanity. You don't owe anyone access to the healed, stronger version of you, especially if they played a part in your wounding. If they couldn't love you when you gave them everything, they don't deserve you now that you've found your strength. Let them be surprised. Let them wonder why the cycle ended. Let them sit in the silence they created. Because sometimes your absence will say what your words never could. Sometimes your peace will speak louder than any confrontation, louder than any long explanation ever would. And trust this, the same God who walked with you through the valley will meet you on the road out. You are not walking away alone. You're walking with purpose. You're walking with protection. You're stepping into a promise that cannot be fulfilled in the place where your soul was bleeding. And once again, let's be reminded, forgiveness is not the same as access. It's a distinction we often blur, especially when our hearts are soft, full of hope, and longing for reconciliation. But you can forgive someone with everything in your heart. You can let go of bitterness, pray for them, and sincerely wish them healing, and still know they no longer have a place in your life. That's not a lack of forgiveness. That's wisdom. Too many of us were taught that forgiveness means going back, opening the door, letting them in, acting like none of it ever happened. But when you're walking with God, forgiveness looks different. It means releasing the burden of offense, letting go of the rage, the resentment, the desire for revenge. It means you stop hoping they'll feel your pain, and you start reclaiming your peace. But it also means protecting what God has restored. It means you don't hand your peace, your hard-won, God-given peace, back to the one who shattered it in the first place. Because here's something important to understand. Some people only apologize to gain re-entry. Not because they've changed, but because you have. They sense your strength. They feel the shift in your energy. They hear the silence, and it unsettles them. Not because they respect your healing, but because they want to interrupt it. And this is where discernment becomes your shield. This is where you must remember, forgiveness is free. Access is earned. You don't owe anyone a second chance just because you offered forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift you give to set yourself free. Access, that's a boundary you draw to protect what God has healed. And if someone has damaged your heart, broken your trust, manipulated your kindness, and they did it knowingly, with full awareness, you are not required to give them another chance to do it again. Yes, God calls us to forgive, but He never asked us to be naive. He never told us to leave the gate open to those who only enter to burn down what they didn't build. You can bless someone from a distance. You can pray for them sincerely, without ever letting them back into your circle. You can wish them well, while still choosing separation. Because some people weren't just a bad season, they were a warning. And the lesson God taught you through that experience, that lesson was meant to protect your future. If you let them back in, without repentance, without fruit, without transformation, what you're giving them is not a second chance. It's another opportunity to betray you. Let me say this clearly. Forgiveness says, I no longer hate you. Wisdom says, I no longer trust you. And both can exist together, in a heart that has truly healed. Both can walk side by side when you understand that grace doesn't mean foolishness. You can be full of mercy and still guard the doors God asked you to protect. We were reminded that forgiveness and access are not the same. Forgiveness sets you free, but access, that must be earned and guarded. Especially when people try to return not to rebuild, but to repeat. Because here's the hard truth. Some people know exactly what to say. They know the right tone, the right timing, the perfect apology script. They speak the language of remorse, but their heart hasn't changed. They're not seeking redemption. They're rehearsing a performance. They're not repenting. They're manipulating. They want a reaction. They want a way back in. They're not trying to heal what was broken. They're trying to reopen the same door they once slammed, so they can come back and finish the damage they started. And if you let them in too early, if you confuse emotional manipulation for spiritual transformation, you'll find yourself right back in the same pit you just clawed your way out of. That's why God calls us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. It is possible to be loving and discerning at the same time. You can be merciful and cautious. You can extend grace without tearing down the walls of wisdom. That's not bitterness. That's not being cold. That's called being a good steward of your soul. The enemy would love for you to confuse forgiveness with weakness. He wants you to think that being soft-hearted means being unguarded. But the Spirit of God teaches something deeper: how to forgive and how to set healthy boundaries that keep you emotionally and spiritually safe. So listen closely. The person who broke you does not get to define this new season of your life. Just because they say they're sorry or act like it doesn't mean they're safe. Just because they show emotion doesn't mean they've changed. Guilt is not growth. Tears are not transformation. If someone truly wants to walk with you again, don't just listen to their words. Look for fruit. Look for humility, for consistency, for behavior that reflects repentance, not just regret. Until that shows up, they don't get access. They don't get the same level of closeness. They don't get to re-enter the garden of your peace while their hands still smell of smoke. Forgiveness is about releasing the grip of what they did. Access is about protecting what God is doing in you now. This season is about becoming who you're meant to be. It's about making room for the right people, the ones who nourish your spirit, who lift your head, who protect your peace instead of draining it. And if someone comes knocking on the same door they once set on fire, you do not have to open it. You don't owe anyone a second chance to rewrite a story God already ended. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to defend your boundaries. You can forgive them fully and still smile with grace and say, "No, not this time. God is doing something new in me." And hear me, there is no shame in that. There is no guilt in guarding your growth. There is nothing wrong with protecting your peace. Because if they truly cared, they never would have caused the damage. If they truly respected you, they wouldn't be asking to return through a door they willingly destroyed. There's something powerful in letting go. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Some people simply cannot go where God is leading you next. Their role in your life has ended, and dragging them into your future will only weigh you down. Trying to force them into your next chapter is like trying to fit shattered glass into a brand new window frame. Sure, it looks familiar, but it's sharp, dangerous, and it won't hold when the pressure comes. Eventually, there comes a moment when you stop hoping they'll recognize your worth, and you start walking like you already know it. That's not pride. That's healing. That's not arrogance. That's awareness. You can't keep pausing your purpose to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You can't keep begging for love from someone who had every opportunity to treat you right and still chose to break you. At some point, you stop waiting for the phone call. You stop checking for the apology that's never coming, You stop reading between the lines of silence. And instead, you look up, take a breath, and say, Lord, I trust you with what's behind me, and I'm ready for what's ahead. No, it's not easy. It hurts to release people you once cried for. It stings to let go of someone you thought would be in your story forever. But the truth is, not everyone is assigned to your destiny. Some were only meant to walk beside you for a season. And when that season ends, it's not your job to carry them into your future. It's your job to obey God, even when it feels like loss. And the enemy? He wants you stuck. Stuck in yesterday's conversations, replaying the memories, rehearsing every word, every silence, every wound. Why? Because as long as you're looking backward, we uncover the truth. As long as you're looking backward, holding on to what wounded you, you're not stepping into what can heal you. The enemy wants you stuck. But God, He's calling you forward, higher. Because sometimes elevation begins with separation. You can't rise while dragging the dead weight of what already fell. You can't climb when you're holding hands with someone who refuses to leave the ground. There comes a moment where you have to trust that letting go isn't just about walking away. It's about making space. Space for peace. Space for clarity. Space for God-sent people, not confusion dressed as companionship. You gave them grace. You gave them time. You gave them second chances, and third, and fourth. You gave them your loyalty, your prayers, your forgiveness. And what did they give in return? Wounds, silence, lies, disappointment. And at some point, love doesn't mean holding on. It means closing the door. Not because you've grown cruel, but because you've finally learned to be kind to yourself. It's not weakness to walk away from dysfunction. It's wisdom. It's not bitterness to stop reaching for someone who only ever reached to hurt you. It's self-respect. And it's not unforgiveness to protect your heart from more damage. It's discernment. You can't heal in the same space that broke you. You can't grow in the same soil that once tried to suffocate you. You cannot keep inviting people into your life who only show up to steal your joy. And here's something you need to hear clearly. God does not need you to prove your worth to those who are blind to it. He does not need you to keep chasing people who made the choice to leave. What He does want is your heart, fully surrendered, fully open, fully trusting. And listen to me, just because they let you go doesn't mean you weren't worthy. Just because they walked away doesn't mean you weren't enough. Their actions were never a reflection of your value. Their betrayal didn't cancel your purpose. Their silence didn't erase your calling. When people mishandle you, that's on them, not on you. You are still chosen. You are still anointed. You are still called for greater things. Letting go, it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the moment when you stop merely surviving and start truly living. It's the day you take your peace back, unapologetically. It's the hour you look in the mirror, see past the pain, and remember who you are in Christ. From that moment forward, you stop settling. No more halfway love. No more temporary loyalty. No more holding space for people who only left you empty. You walk forward, maybe trembling, maybe scarred, but you walk free. Because when God heals you, He doesn't just tape you back together. He gives you a new heart, a new strength, a new joy. And when He restores, He doesn't just give back what was lost. He prepares you for what's ahead. So let the door stay shut. Let the silence remain silent. Let the past be the past. Don't you dare reopen what God already closed. Because the right people won't need to be chased. The ones God sends, they won't need convincing. And the future He's written for you, it doesn't require you to carry the people who tried to destroy it. It requires one thing. Let go and walk in freedom. We talked about letting go and walking in freedom, learning not to carry into your future the people who tried to break you in your past. But once you begin that journey forward, there's another layer of wisdom God invites you to embrace: the quiet power of silence. There's something deeply powerful about keeping parts of yourself tucked away from the world. In a time when everyone seems eager to share their every thought, every feeling, every move, it becomes an act of strength to stay quiet, to remain private, to protect your peace. Because privacy is power. When people don't know what you're thinking, they can't predict your next step. When they don't know your plans, they can't interfere. And when they don't have access to your heart, they can't twist your words or use your vulnerability against you. But today's world praises exposure. We've been taught that transparency is a sign of trust, that being open about everything somehow makes us more real, more connected, more honest. But here's the truth: not everyone who listens has good intentions. Some people don't lean in to comfort you. They lean in to collect information. They smile at your pain. They nod at your stories. They pretend to care. But deep down, they're storing everything away, waiting for the right moment to use it against you. The less they know, the less control they have. It's that simple. And yet, so many people today pour out their lives online. They share their struggles publicly. They confess their secrets to strangers. And then they wonder why betrayal shows up, why judgment comes so fast, or why unexpected resistance starts blocking their path. The more you hand out pieces of your life, the more you give others the power to shape your story. You give them access to your highs and your lows. And slowly, without realizing it, they start forming opinions about what you deserve, what you can achieve, and where your life should go. But when you learn to guard your plans, to protect your emotions, and to hold your personal life with intention, you stay in control. You begin to move in wisdom. Think about those who truly carry influence. They don't announce every step. They don't document every detail. They move in silence, and somehow they're always 10 steps ahead. Why? Because they understand this truth: privacy protects progress. The moment you speak too soon, the moment you reveal too much, you invite interference. Sometimes that comes as jealousy. Other times, it's masked as concern. And often, it's just plain negativity. Because the more people know, the more they feel entitled to share their opinions. And not every opinion is worth hearing. Have you noticed? The loudest people, the ones constantly talking about what they're going to do, are usually the ones doing the least. Why? Because speaking it gives them a false sense of accomplishment. They announce their intentions, people applaud, and suddenly it feels like they've already arrived. But words without action mean nothing. The people who truly win in life, they let their results speak for themselves. They don't need praise. They don't need validation before the victory. They just do the work. And by the time anyone realizes what they've done, it's already finished. That's the power of privacy. Being private doesn't mean you're secretive. It doesn't mean you shut the world out or walk in isolation. It simply means you're intentional about what you share and with whom you share it. Not everyone needs to know your struggles. Not everyone deserves to hear your dreams. Not everyone should have access to your deepest vulnerabilities. Because once you start filtering your audience, once you start guarding your inner world, something begins to shift. Your life becomes quieter. The chaos fades. The drama disappears. And suddenly your focus sharpens. There's a reason some of the most successful people are also the most private. They understand the value of protecting their energy. And when you guard your energy, you create room for peace, for clarity, for the kind of success that's rooted, not rushed. So the next time you feel tempted to overshare, to announce your next move, to vent to someone just because they're willing to listen. Pause. Ask yourself, do they really need to know this? Will this serve my growth or expose my vulnerability? Because once something is said, once something is out there, you can't take it back. Privacy is a gift, a shield, a strategy. Use it wisely, because not everyone clapping for you wants to see you win. Not everyone smiling in your face carries pure intentions. Some people are only around to watch, to wait, to gather details they can later twist for their own benefit. And that's why you must be careful. That's why you must be selective. We explored the quiet strength found in privacy, that guarding your personal life isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Now, let's take that even deeper, because there's something else you need to understand. Not everyone deserves access to you. Some people show up wearing masks. They disguise themselves as friends, supporters, even allies. But beneath the surface, they're not here to celebrate you. They're here to study you. They want to know what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you vulnerable. They'll ask thoughtful questions, nod at your pain, act fascinated by your dreams. But their interest isn't always innocent. Sometimes they're not gathering insight, they're collecting ammunition. And the dangerous part, they won't always use it right away. They'll tuck it away, store it quietly in their emotional back pocket. And then, one day, when jealousy creeps in, when they feel insecure, threatened, or left behind, that's when they strike. That's when you start hearing things you never told anyone but them. That's when the comments become sharp, the conversations become twisted, and you finally realize what you thought was a friend was really just a spy. Have you ever wondered why certain plans fell apart the moment you spoke about them? You were moving in silence, building something sacred, and everything was flowing until you got excited. You shared your breakthrough with the wrong person, and suddenly, nothing worked the same. That's not always a coincidence. Some people don't need to sabotage you with actions. Their presence is sabotage enough. Their energy, their silent envy, their unspoken desire for you to fail, it can shift the atmosphere around your progress. That's why you must be mindful. Not paranoid, not fearful, just mindful. It's not about shutting everyone out. It's about discerning who's truly for you and who's simply around you. Some people only want proximity so they can say they were there when you made it. Others stay close so they can take credit for your success, or quietly make sure you never get too far ahead. And some, they only keep you nearby because they enjoy having someone to compare themselves to, someone to gossip about, someone to secretly compete with. The problem is, you don't always recognize these people until it's too late. Until they've already used your own words to weaken you. Until they've already taken what they wanted and walked away. That's why guarding your dreams, your wounds, your goals, and your fears is so important. The less they know, the less they can twist. The less they know, the less they can judge. The less they know, the less power they have over your life. And don't be fooled into thinking that time equals loyalty. It doesn't. Some people will stand beside you for years and still not be for you. Time doesn't build loyalty. Character does. Watch closely. Some will cheer to your face, but whisper doubt behind your back. Some will support you publicly, but criticize you privately. And others will simply go quiet when your life starts rising. Pay attention, not just to what they say, but how they act when things start going well for you. Do they celebrate you, or do they shrink away? Do they uplift you, or do they plant subtle seeds of doubt? The signs are always there, but you have to be willing to see them. At the end of the day, you don't owe anyone access to your life. Not your moves, not your plans, not your pain. You don't have to explain your process to people who haven't earned your trust. Your energy, your peace, your privacy, those are sacred. Guard them. Because once you give away too much, you don't get to choose what they do with it. And by the time you realize you overshared with the wrong person, it's often already too late. There's something powerful about the person who moves in silence, who doesn't overshare, who doesn't feel the need to explain themselves to the world. That kind of quiet confidence, it's magnetic. Mystery commands respect. When people can't figure you out, when they don't know what you're thinking, when they can't predict your next move, they have no choice but to sit back and watch. And that space of wonder, that space where they no longer have control, is where your true power begins to rise. Because people are curious by nature. They want to know what you're building, what you're planning, what's coming next. We uncovered how silence commands respect, and how mystery becomes your shield in a world that constantly demands your openness. Now, let's go deeper into why protecting your inner world is so essential. You see, when people ask about your plans, when they press into your thoughts or your feelings, it's not always because they care. Most of the time, they're measuring you, categorizing you, trying to define you. They want to figure you out, box you in, so they know where to place you in their mental hierarchy. And here's the dangerous part. The moment they think they've got you all figured out, they stop paying attention. The moment they believe they know everything about you, they stop respecting the unknown. That's why it's powerful and wise to leave something unsaid, to keep a part of yourself tucked away, to ensure that no one ever knows enough to feel like they can define you. Think of the people who carry true presence, the ones who walk into a room and instantly shift the atmosphere. It's not because they're loud. It's not because they overshare or try to prove themselves. It's because there's something about them that you can't quite read. They don't broadcast every thought. They don't explain every decision. They don't walk around narrating their entire life. And that quiet restraint is what makes people lean in. Because here's a truth most people overlook. The more you say, the less weight your words carry. The more you defend, the less people respect your stance. The more you explain, the more room you give others to question, doubt, or challenge you. But when you learn to say less, when you move with purpose, with restraint, with focus, when you let people wonder instead of handing them a full script, you become untouchable. Ever notice how the ones who talk the most are often taken the least seriously? It's not because they aren't smart or sincere. It's because they give too much away. And the more people know, the more they feel entitled to speak into your life, even when they haven't earned that right. When people can predict your next move, they stop respecting you. But when they're unsure, when they don't know what you're planning, thinking, or feeling, that's when they start watching. That's when they start listening. That's when you regain control. This isn't about being cold. It's not about isolating yourself or pretending to be mysterious. It's about being intentional, careful with your words, wise with your access. Some people think sharing everything is strength. They believe that being open about every detail makes them real. But real strength isn't in what you reveal, it's in what you restrain. It's in knowing that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every plan needs to be shared. Not every emotion needs to be explained. Because when people don't know too much about you, they can't form the full picture. They can guess. They can assume. But they'll never be certain. And that uncertainty? That's power. It keeps people off balance. It keeps them respectful. It keeps them curious. And when people are curious, when they don't know what's coming next, they stop assuming they have control. So stop feeling like you have to explain yourself. Stop handing out the blueprint to your life. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them respect the fact that they don't know everything about you. Because the moment they realize they can't figure you out, they have no choice but to respect your presence. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that everyone around them deserves full access. That sharing every problem, every success, every thought somehow brings them closer to others. But the truth, the more you share, the more you invite drama. Not everyone can handle your truth with care. Not everyone deserves access to your mind. And not everyone is rooting for your healing. Ever had a problem get worse right after you shared it with someone? You thought you were confiding in a friend. You spoke with trust. But later you discovered they twisted your words, exposed your pain, or used your vulnerability against you. That's not an accident. Because some people, they don't listen to understand. We explored the danger of oversharing, how even innocent conversations can be used against you when the wrong people are listening. But here's what makes it worse. Some people aren't listening to support. They're listening to consume. Some people collect your words, not to help, but to entertain themselves. They love a good story, especially when it isn't their own. They thrive on drama. They feed on gossip. There's something thrilling to them about being the one who knows just a little more than everyone else. It gives them power. It gives them attention. And if you keep feeding them the details of your life, if you keep opening up without discernment, you slowly become their favorite source of entertainment. The more you give them, the more they have to repeat. And before you even realize it, your personal life becomes public conversation, twisted, stretched, exaggerated into something barely recognizable. There are people who will pretend to care just to keep you talking. They'll ask the right questions, nod at the right moments, offer just enough sympathy to make you feel safe. But if you pay attention closely, what happens afterward? Do they keep your words sacred? Do they follow up with real support? Or do they vanish until the next time they want a glimpse into your world? The wrong people don't care about solutions. They care about stories. They don't want healing. They want headlines. And if you keep offering them access, don't be surprised when your own words come echoing back to you from someone else's mouth. The truth is, not all conflicts start from the incident itself. Some begin the moment too many people know about it. What could have been a small misunderstanding between two people becomes a storm. Because outsiders got involved. Opinions fly. Sides are taken. Tension rises. And suddenly, what was private becomes public, and the pain multiplies. That's why silence is often your best defense. The less you say, the fewer chances people have to twist your words, insert their opinions, or turn your business into entertainment for others. And it's not just about keeping your problems to yourself. It's also about guarding your victories. Because not everyone wants to see you win. They may act happy for you. They may smile and say, "I'm proud of you." But deep down, some of them are silently waiting for you to stumble. The moment they see you rising, insecurity kicks in, and their own self-doubt turns into negativity, criticism, and doubt aimed directly at you. They'll tell you your plans are unrealistic, that your goals are too ambitious, that you're not as capable as you think. But it's not because they actually believe that. It's because they don't want to see you go further than they ever dared to go. Ever notice how some people always show up when you're struggling, but vanish the moment things go well? That's because some people are only comfortable when you're on their level, or lower. But when you start rising, they get quiet. Their smiles fade, and their words begin to carry sharp edges disguised as concern. That's why it's so important to move in silence. If they don't have a front row seat to your progress, they can't interfere with it. If they don't know your next move, they can't block it. If they're not aware of your blessings, they can't twist them into burdens. At the end of the day, not everything needs to be shared. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every decision needs outside input. Peace comes from knowing when to stay quiet, when to protect your energy, and when to keep your business exactly where it belongs, with you. Because the less they know, the less they can control. The less they know, the less they can judge. The less they know, the less they can interfere. So many people loudly declare what they're going to do next, thinking that speaking it out loud makes it more real. But words without action are just noise. The truth is, the loudest person in the room is rarely the most impactful. It's the one who stays focused. The one who doesn't need constant validation. The one who moves with quiet determination and lets the results speak loudest of all. There's something magnetic about a person who doesn't explain themselves, who doesn't broadcast every step, who just does the work and lets the fruit speak for itself. Ever notice how the most successful people don't go around making announcements? We saw how those who truly make an impact don't announce their every move. They show up, and the results speak loudest. No noise, no warnings, just presence, just progress. Because real growth, real breakthrough, it happens in private. When you protect your plans, when you hold your vision close, you eliminate distractions. You shut out noise. You remove unnecessary opinions, and you give yourself the quiet space you need to focus. But the moment you start talking too much about what you're going to do, you crack open the door. And that's when doubt, envy, and unsolicited advice come flooding in. Some people will tell you your dreams are impossible, not because they've studied your path, but because they've never seen themselves win. And if they can't imagine it for themselves, they'll struggle to imagine it for you. Their voice isn't rooted in truth, it's rooted in limitation. Others, they'll smile, they'll act supportive, but deep down, they're hoping you don't follow through. Because your courage, it reminds them of everything they were too afraid to pursue. And then there are those who don't want to support or sabotage, they want to steal. You share an idea, something you've been quietly nurturing. It's exciting. It's original. You speak it aloud, thinking you're sharing a spark of inspiration. But before you know it, someone else is running with it, posting it, pitching it, executing it. You're left behind, not because you lack talent, but because you shared too soon. It happens all the time. And that's why keeping your plans private gives you power. If no one knows what you're building, no one can copy it. If they don't know what seeds you're planting, they can't dig them up. Because here's something you might not realize. Talking about your goals creates a false sense of progress. You say you're going to do something. People cheer. You feel the emotional high. And suddenly, it feels like you've already achieved something. But applause without execution is just noise. The real work, it doesn't live in the announcement. It lives in the grind. It lives in the silence. It lives in the hours no one sees, when you're sweating, building, staying consistent, while everyone else is still talking. The problem with announcing your plans too early is that once the excitement wears off, you're left with the hard part, the actual work. But by then, you've already burned through the energy that should have fueled your next step. That's why you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify your decisions. You don't need validation to begin. Because the only proof you need is in the result. When you succeed, people will notice. When the work is done, the outcome speaks louder than your voice ever could. And those same people who doubted you, ignored you, didn't take you seriously, they'll be the ones asking, how did you do it? But by then, it won't matter. Because you didn't do it for them. You did it for you. So don't waste your breath announcing. Don't waste your energy explaining. Don't open the door for interference. Stay quiet. Stay focused. Let your results do the talking. There's something sharp, something magnetic, about someone who knows how to keep things to themselves. When people don't know your next move, they can't block it. They can't weigh it down with opinions. They can't plant doubt where your confidence is finally starting to grow. Protecting your privacy isn't secrecy. It's strategy. It's about protecting your peace, your focus, your momentum. It's about creating space where you can grow, without the noise, without the pressure, without the opinions of those who were never meant to carry your vision. Because here's the truth. The more people know, the more they think they're entitled to speak into your life. And not every opinion deserves your attention. People love to offer advice, even when they're not qualified. And the moment you share your goals, your ideas, even your struggles, you invite voices into your space. Some will mean well. Some will try to encourage. But many, they'll just bring confusion, doubt, insecurity. Negativity masked as logic. They'll tell you it won't work, that you're not ready, that it's already been done by someone else. And even if you don't believe them, those words have a way of lingering. They echo when you're tired. They whisper when you're uncertain. They show up just when you're about to take the next step and make you hesitate. And worse, there are those who pretend to support you, but in their hearts, they hope you fail. They nod. They clap. They echo all the right lines. But behind the smile, there's fear. Fear that you might actually succeed. Because if you do, you'll rise higher than they ever dared to climb. We talked about protecting your vision from the whispers of doubt and envy, especially from those who secretly hope you'll stay small. But here's the thing, when you start growing, when you begin to evolve and improve, something shifts around you. Because your progress forces others to confront their lack of it. And not everyone is ready for that. Some people would rather see you stagnant than face the truth of their own complacency. Instead of rising with you, they'll try to hold you in place. They'll make you feel guilty for dreaming big, for wanting more, for daring to want better. That's why protecting your energy isn't just helpful. It's vital. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your emotions, your plans. The more you invite in unqualified opinions, the harder it becomes to hear your own inner voice, the one God gave you to guide your unique journey. And the moment you let someone else's voice become louder than your own, you start second-guessing when you should be moving. You look for approval when you should be walking in trust. You hesitate when you were built to lead. Some people won't drain your energy in loud, obvious ways. They'll do it subtly. They come with complaints, with negativity, with their problems wrapped in passive guilt. And before you realize it, your mind is cluttered with emotions, expectations, and confusion that don't even belong to you. You were meant to build something beautiful. But how can you build if you're constantly carrying what was never yours to hold? You can't create a future when you're being pulled in 100 directions by opinions that weren't invited. You can't run forward when you're dragging the weight of other people's fears, doubts, and emotional baggage. Because growth, real growth, requires discipline. It requires focus. It demands a kind of tunnel vision that not everyone will understand. And that's okay. You're not here to make everyone comfortable. You're not here to explain your every step to people who can't see the vision God gave you. You're here to become the person you were created to be. And that becoming, it doesn't require an audience. The ones meant to walk with you will support you without needing every detail. The ones who don't belong in your next chapter will naturally fade away, especially once they realize they no longer have unfiltered access to you. Silence is not weakness. Privacy is not isolation. They are wisdom. They are clarity. They are power. Your path is yours. And not everyone needs a front row seat to your transformation. Some things are meant to be sacred, to be nurtured in stillness, to grow in quiet soil, protected from the wind of outside opinion, until they're strong enough to thrive in the light. And when you protect your peace, when you guard your energy, when you stop explaining and start executing, that's when the shift happens. That's when you truly thrive. So stay focused, stay quiet, and don't let anyone have more access to your life than they've earned. Because here's the truth. When you stop over-explaining yourself, something powerful happens. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop seeking permission to become who you're meant to be. You start living unapologetically, rooted, steady, and clear. It won't always be easy. The world will try to pull you back into noise. People will ask, "Why are you so quiet now?" They'll say, "You've changed." And you have. You've learned that not every version of you deserves to be explained. You've learned that peace is more valuable than approval. And you've discovered that when you guard your spirit, you grow faster, stronger, deeper. So from now on, let your silence carry weight. Let your consistency build trust. Let your results speak volumes. Because the most powerful voice in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one that doesn't need to say much at all. And when you finally step into that quiet confidence, you'll see the right people will find you. The wrong ones will fall away. And the path you're walking, it will begin to unfold with clarity, peace, and purpose. So protect your energy, honor your boundaries, and never apologize for becoming untouchable in the name of your healing. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of everything you've been building. This is your time now. Walk quietly, walk boldly, and let the world hear you through your impact, not your explanation.